Firstpost reports from the world's second largest continent.
Hello, I'm Alyson Grange. A very warm welcome from Durban, South Africa.
We get you the news and the newsmakers from Africa. From elections to climate change to innovations and opportunities. As the world's attention shifts, we report from Africa, the heart of the global south.
Join me every weekday live on Firstpost. Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Alyson Grange, coming to you live from Durban, South Africa. First, let's take a look at the headlines. The International Criminal Court issues arrest warrants for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, and Hamas leader Mohammed Deif, alleging war crimes. And Russia launches an intercontinental ballistic missile in an attack on Ukraine, says Kiev. If true, it will be the first known use of the powerful weapon designed to deliver nuclear strikes in the ongoing war. The UK, European Union, New Zealand and Ireland fumed during COP29 climate talks in Azerbaijan over a draft deal that risks going back on a historic agreement to reduce the use of fossil fuels. Britain imposes a travel ban and an asset freeze on Angolan billionaire Isabel dos Santos and a global anti-corruption sanctions regime as she faces a graft probe. And at least 38 people were killed in two attacks as gunmen opened fire on passenger vehicles in Pakistan's Khyber Pakhtunkhwa region. Officials say the incidents were linked to sectarian violence. Hello and welcome. Let's take a look at our top story. It has been over 30 years since the last country in Africa shut its doors to colonizers. Yet it seems that the Europeans are not ready to accept the fact that Africa can govern itself and that it is a continent more than just deserts and barren lands. They have continued to paint a picture and build a narrative that Africa needs them, that Africa still is not aware about different traditions in the world, especially the West. Guessing what we are talking about? It is about a song named Do They Know It's Christmas? Now, the song Do They Know It's Christmas is at the heart of a major controversy across continents. It is a song made by Band Aid, a charity supergroup of global musicians and singers, particularly British and Irish artists. It was assembled by musicians Bob Geldof and Midge Ure in 1984, and the song was released in the same year and was primarily a charity single song for a famine in Ethiopia between 1983 and 1985. When the song released, it shot straight to #1 on the UK charts and stayed there for 5 weeks. Within a year, it raised about $8.4 million. And in 2024, it is back in the limelight, but for all the wrong reasons. The charity collective is now coming out with a new remixed version on the 40th anniversary of the song, and the popular British singer and songwriter Ed Sheeran has voiced his criticism on it. Now, in a post on social media platform Instagram, he said that his approval was not sought for the new version of the song. Ed Sheeran, who was a part of the 30th anniversary version of the song in 2014, wrote that a decade after its release, his understanding about the narrative associated with the song had completely changed. Now, when the song was first released in 1984, it featured lyrics that were later criticized by artists as portraying Africa in a bad light and a place where nothing ever grows. Some even said that the lyrics were ignorant and portrayed a colonial attitude. Aiming his sharp criticism on the song, the British Ghanaian musician Nana Richard Abiona, better known as Fuse ODG, said that while it might generate sympathy and donations, they perpetuate damaging stereotypes that stifle Africa's economic growth, tourism and investment, and destroys the continent's dignity, pride and identity. He further said that these initiatives fuel pity rather than partnership, discouraging meaningful engagement. Now, Fuse ODG was himself offered to be a part of the 30th anniversary version in 2014, but he declined to be a part of it and had even asked Bob Geldof to reconsider the lyrics. To contextualize, Do They Know It's Christmas has had a total of 3 versions since its release in 1984. For its 20th anniversary version in 2004, the song was re-recorded with more popular music stars of the era, including Lamar, Estelle, Daniel and Natasha Bedingfield, among others. While for its 30th anniversary version, which debuted on X Factor in 2014, it saw several artists including Ed Sheeran, One Direction, Sam Smith and Chris Martin from Coldplay. The band had also tweaked the lyrics to better suit the situation of Ebola in West Africa. Now, the latest version, which is set to be released on the 25th of November, will see the blend of voices from all of the 3 previous editions of the song. Interestingly, it was media coverage of the famine in Ethiopia that prompted Geldof, then the lead singer of the Boomtown Rats, and the Ultravox frontman mid-year to put together a supergroup and to record this charity single that reports suggest became an iconic festive tune of all time. Defending his song after the controversy that emerged this week, Bob Geldof said that the charity from the song had saved many people's lives. Geldof said that the song had kept hundreds of thousands of people alive and that the Band Aid had donated hundreds of thousands of dollars to help those running from the mass slaughter in Sudan and to feed children in the same famine-affected areas of Ethiopia. But it is not just Band Aid that has raised charity for the relief. During the Ethiopian famine between 1983 and 1985, that report suggests saw anywhere between 300,000 to 1.3 million people's deaths, and also saw nearly 2.5 million people being internally displaced. Several bands, including USA for Africa, Canadian group Northern Lights, French group the Canteurs Sans Frontières, and the Yugoslavian music group of U-Rock Mizia, released singles to contribute for anti-famine efforts in Ethiopia. Yet some of these songs that have gone on to become extremely popular in the West have left indelible impact on the minds of Africans who are just hoping that this narrative changes soon. Now, to discuss more on this with us, we have the man himself, the British Ghanaian musician Fuse ODG, who also criticized the song. He's joining us live from London, United Kingdom. Thank you for being with us.
How you doing, Alyson?
Great to have you on the show. Let's jump right in. What are you, Ed Sheeran, and the other critics pointing to when you describe the song Do They Know It's Christmas as dehumanizing and damaging to Africans? And how valid are these concerns in today's context?
Yeah, I think if you actually break down the lyrics, because I think people tend to overlook what the lyric is saying. So one of the lyrics says that there's no peace and joy this Christmas in West Africa, right? Or in Africa. And for me, that in itself is not even the truth, because every Christmas, there's millions of people that go to Africa to enjoy themselves. For example, every December, everybody goes to Ghana to have a great time, so first of all, there's no fact and there's no truth in that lyric. And I think I understand his sentiment, right? Because he feels like he has to make people feel sad and feel pity for Africa in order for people to donate their money. But my perspective is that in the whole process of making people feel sorry for Africa, they would never come to Africa because they would just think Africa is a place of poverty, a place where you won't be able to enjoy Christmas, a place where, as the lyrics say, there's death in every tear. And I find that very detrimental to Africa because it means that people will get scared to come to Africa. They'll give their donation, but they would never come. You know, maybe they might give their $2 or their £2, but they would never come and spend 2,000. Right. And that's the point I'm trying to make, that let's find a way to position it in a way where we're not degrading the people of Africa. You know, so I gave an example of Ukraine. You know, we've managed to raise over 200 billion for Ukraine, but we didn't have to say that there's no peace and joy in Europe this Christmas. We didn't have to say that there's death in every tear in Europe. And another problem that I have with it is that there was a crisis, as you said in the intro, there was a crisis in Ethiopia at the time. But when it comes to the lyric and the images, it's portraying the whole of Africa. So he's taken one crisis from one place and he's painted a whole image of Africa. And as a result of that, we've lost in trillions in revenue because people refuse to come to Africa because they're scared. You know, so I feel like there needs to be a different approach. And also after 40 years, you know, and nothing has changed. At some point, you need to look at your business model or your charity model and tweak it. And in a way where it has, I guess, more impact or positive impact, because nothing has changed from what he's done.
Yeah. Fuse, right. Can I jump in there and say that Band-Aid has raised over £150 million for humanitarian causes since 1984. Yet, of course, this criticism persists about its portrayal, as you've said. How can these charity initiatives like this balance effective fundraising with accurate and respectful representation?
Yeah, I mean, you've made the point that they raised 150 million, but Africa has lost in trillions, which surpasses this 150 million that he's raised in a short term. So it's not enough to say that, you know, because of that, we should lose our dignity and our pride in order for people to, you know, raise money for us. And to your second question on how do we do it in a way where it's not degrading, is have a conversation with the people, talk to Africans, ask them how they, you know, how do you think we can partner to help you? So I'll give an example. When he asked me to be a part of Band-Aid 30 at 2014, right? I seen the lyric and I said to him that this lyric does not reflect the truth of what happens in Africa. So my suggestion is if we can change it and say something else that don't degrade the people, but uplift the people, because the amount of artists, the caliber of artists that he had on there, from One Direction to Ed Sheeran to Adele, you know, they're all big artists. And at that time, we were all in the charts. I was in the top 10 too, and we've all made songs that would just make people dance. That would just make people happy. We all had celebratory songs in the charts. So why is it that we can't make a song that actually celebrates, and also we can raise the funds that we need to raise? Because if truly what we want to do is raise money to help people, then with these caliber of artists, we can make a powerful song that still, you know, it still has a sense of respect in it. You know, it still has love inside of it. We can still get together and make a song and raise money and actually help the people. But he refused to hear me out. And that's the problem that, you know, I had with that whole situation. And that's why I had to respectfully say no. So moving forward, there needs to be a dialogue where we both listen to each other. And I'm not just talking about Bob Geldof. I'm just talking about Band-Aid and initiatives like it. We all need to have a conversation. Let's have a dialogue. See how you can partner with people. It needs to feel like a collaboration, not patronization. You know, so moving forward, that's how it has to be. And you have to also allow the people who are going through it to lead it.
Right. Absolutely. Fuse ODG, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa, with your valued insights on all the latest here.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Our next story is from Mali, where the military junta has fired the civilian prime minister. His dismissal comes after a rare criticism of the country's military rulers and their failures in organizing the promised elections in the country. Now, the sacked prime minister is Choguel Maiga, who was appointed by the military leaders after the 2021 coup. The move was announced in a presidential decree issued by Colonel Assimi Goïta and was read on the state television.
Decree number 2024-0656 PDRN of November 20th, 2024, terminating the functions of the Prime Minister and members of the government.
After firing the civilian prime minister, the junta has insisted the appointed military officer general, Abdoulaye Maiga, as the new prime minister. West Africa's Mali has been a center of Islamist insurgency for over a decade. The country went through two successive coups in 2020 and 2021 amid growing violence. In 2020, military leader Colonel Assimi Goïta assumed the role of vice president under a civilian president after overthrowing the democratically elected government. In 2021, he overthrew and replaced the same civilian president in the wake of a rift between the two. After the 2021 coup, the junta promised to organize elections and to hand over power to civilians by the end of March this year. But these elections were postponed indefinitely. Now, Choguel Maiga was named as prime minister in 2021. He served as a minister on several occasions under the democratically elected governments and also ran 3 times as a presidential candidate. Later, he led a coalition and protests against the democratically elected government before its ouster. So he became the prime ministerial face for the junta in 2021. He initially fervently defended the junta rule and its cooperation with Russia over the West. However, lately he has distanced himself from the military government. Last week, he publicly condemned the lack of clarity regarding the end of the transition to civilian rule in Mali. He said the confusion could pose serious challenges and the risk of going backwards. Months ago, a close ally of him was also sentenced to a year in prison for openly criticizing the military rulers. Maiga's changing stance on the junta has also met with protests by some of the military supporters in Mali. Protesters had called for him to step down after his public criticism of the junta.
Mr. President of the transition, for your own safety and for the well-being of our country, Malians urge you to take full note of your Prime Minister's actions. A separation is preferable at this stage. He could sell you out to the many enemies lurking over our nation.
The Prime Minister's dismissal also comes just a week after the junta arrested one of the country's top politicians for criticizing the military rulers of neighboring Burkina Faso. Now, the arrested politician is Issa Kaunjim, who previously supported Mali's current military leader. He was arrested on charges of insulting a foreign head of state, which is a crime in Mali. Mali's neighbor, Burkina Faso, is also ruled by a military regime, and they are also joined by Niger in West Africa. The military leaders in these nations capitalized on popular discontent with the previous democratically elected governments over security issues. Though security still remains the biggest concern in these nations, it is unclear when they will see a transition to civilian governments, if anytime soon. Burkina Faso has extended military rule by 5 more years, while the junta in Niger, which came to power in 2023, claims it will hold elections within 3 years. Despite the delay, the popularity of the military leaders has grown in West Africa. But will they bring their nations out of the chaos as they promised? And staying on with West Africa, Boko Haram has once again wreaked havoc for Nigeria's security forces. In the latest, 7 members of the Nigerian security force set up to defend infrastructure have gone missing after their unit fought off a Boko Haram ambush that also saw 50 terrorists being killed in a counterattack. Reports suggest that 80 security operatives tasked with protecting the power network were attacked in the Shiroro in the Niger state of Nigeria, but around 200 Boko Haram fighters during a patrol mission, and the spokesperson for the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps, or the NSCDC, an agency set up to protect infrastructure from terrorists in Nigeria, said that efforts were underway to find the 7 missing members of the force. Now, to contextualize, Boko Haram started off as an Islamic sectarian movement, which was founded in 2002 by Muhammad Yusuf in northeastern Nigeria. The group's initial proclaimed intent was to uproot the corruption and injustice in Nigeria, which they blame on Western influences. They also want to impose the Sharia, or Islamic law, and establish an Islamic state. The group began an insurgency against the Nigerian government in 2009. In 2015, Boko Haram then pledged allegiance to the ISIL and took the name Islamic State West African Province, or the ISWAP. But later it split, with one faction retaining the name ISWAP and the other faction reverting to the original name. Since the beginning of the insurgency, the terror group has been carrying out frequent attacks against security officials and civilians, mass kidnappings, killings, and human rights abuses. The terrorist group has mainly operated in the northeast regions of Nigeria, while it has also spread to neighboring countries. Ever since the beginning of the insurgency, some 35,000 civilians have been killed and more than 2 million have been displaced, according to the United Nations. Now, the NSCDC patrol that was ambushed had been assigned to protect the power lines near the border between Kaduna and the Niger state, which is home to Nigeria's largest hydroelectric power plant in Zenguru. Now, Boko Haram is known to sabotage power supplies in Nigeria. Reports suggest that last month Boko Haram vandalized a major transmission line in Niger State's Shiroro district, crippling the power supply in 19 of the West African country's 36 states. But the Nigerian government has tried to fight back Boko Haram terrorists in every manner. In October, the Nigerian President Bola Tinubu claimed that his government had eliminated Boko Haram faster than any other government.
Our administration is winning the war on terror and banditry. Our target is to eliminate all threats of Boko Haram, banditry, kidnapping for ransom, and the scourge of all forms of violent extremism. Within 1 year, our government has eliminated many Boko Haram and bandit commanders faster than ever. As of the last count, over 300 Boko Haram and bandit commanders have been eliminated by our gallant troops in the northeast, northwest, and some other part of the country.
Nigeria has also called for regional support from neighboring countries, Chad, Cameroon, and Niger, to tackle the cross-border threat posed by Boko Haram. They have collectively formed a regional security force. Now, specifically in the Lake Chad region, the latest ambush on Nigerian security forces comes weeks after Boko Haram conducted a deadly attack on the Chadian military, killing about 40 soldiers in the Lake Chad region. Now, this prompted Chad's president, Mahamat Idris Deby, into launching an operation to hunt down the assailants, while also pushing him to warn regional allies that Chad could potentially withdraw from the MNJTF, as it lacked joint efforts and trust among the participating countries. But with the conflict in the northeast of Nigeria now prolonging for over 15 years, it is the people who have been bearing the brunt, with no potential solution on the table and attacks only increasing day by day. And on to our last story. It's about a battle that Africa has been fighting for years. It is the battle against malaria that has been a major cause of deaths in the continent. Over the years, there have been efforts to tackle Africa's malaria problem. However, all of it could be reversed due to the emergence of a new variant. Now, this new mosquito species, called the Anopheles stephensi, could turn out to be Africa's biggest enemy in its fight against malaria. This species thrives in urban areas and is also immune to insecticides. So experts are worried about the impact it could have on Africa. Africa is currently a hub for the most malaria cases in the world. As per the latest WHO data released in 2022, Africa accounted for about 95% of the total malaria cases and deaths globally. In Africa, children under 5 accounted for 80% of the deaths. In recent years, the African nations have been working to eradicate the disease. They have launched initiatives, invited researchers, introduced new drug therapies. Some African countries have also been declared malaria-free. Now, the latest one to join the list is Egypt, which was declared malaria-free by the World Health Organization in October. But the emergence of the new mosquito species is raising alarm. The variant thrives in urban settings, unlike other species which are seasonal and prefer rural areas. It breeds in man-made water storage tanks, roof gutters, or even air conditioning units. It appears to be highly resistant to insecticides and bites earlier in the evening than other carriers. That means that bed nets, which people mostly use above sleeping places, may be much less effective. Until now, bed nets have been a prime weapon against malaria. Now, the Anopheles stephensi is native to parts of South Asia and the Middle East, but it was spotted for the first time in the tiny Horn of Africa state of Djibouti in 2012. Since then, Djibouti, which had eradicated malaria, has seen a steady increase in malaria. It has recorded over 70,000 cases in 2020, as per the latest data available. But the fears have grown recently as the mosquito has arrived in neighboring Ethiopia. And the WHO says it is behind an unprecedented surge in malaria in the East African nation. Ethiopia recorded a surge from 4.1 million malaria cases and 527 deaths last year to 7.3 million cases and 1,100 deaths between the 1st of January and October of 2024. Experts have raised concerns that the mosquito species could spread to denser cities like Mombasa on Kenya's Indian Ocean coast, Sudan's capital, Khartoum. Stephensi was confirmed as present in Kenya in late 2022, but has so far stayed in hotter, drier areas. It has not reached the high-altitude capital of Nairobi. But some studies warning it could eventually reach 126 million city dwellers across Africa. Scientists are yet to understand the biology and the behavior of this mosquito. They say it could be driven by climate and requires high temperatures, but say that much more research is needed. The WHO says it is working with African countries to diversify treatment programs. However, the new malaria variant is also evading tests that are used to diagnose the disease. Experts have also raised the challenges of the lack of coordination between African governments and the political will to fight the new variant before it causes disruption. It is said to be seen if Africa could save itself from the mosquito menace. And that's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.
Hello and welcome to Fast and Factual. My name is Utsav Parekh and here are the top stories of the day. Ukraine